Back in the early 80s, Studio Pierrot found its magical girl formula and applied it here, and here, and here, and okay, not so much here, but it kinda comes back here, and it's definitely here. So let's focus on the 80s shows first. From 1983 to 1986, Studio Pierrot released 4 magical girl shows with fun names like Yumi Mami, the Magical Angel, Persia, the Magic Fairy, Magical Amy, the Magical Star, and Pastel Yumi, the Magic Idol. It's not an actual idol, but you know, it sounds good. Most of these shows focus on a little girl who can transform into an older, idealized version of herself, with Pastel Yumi being their attempt to change things a little by completely eliminating the transformation aspect and adding the ability to bring drawings to life instead. Besides this, all of them share certain elements, plot-wise and even style-wise. For example, they all have 1 year as the time limit to use their powers. They always have crushes on older boys that sure keep getting older, and with the exception of one of the twins, they're all voiced by Yumi. But perhaps most importantly, they all place a lot of emphasis in nurturing the girl's dreams. They also got a bunch of weird, very 80s ovas, and not just with the 4 girls from the studio. There was one featuring Yumi Mami and Studio Ashi Productions' Mingi Momo, where they suddenly grow into giant versions of their magical selves and start fighting. In hindsight, maybe people were already hungry for battle magical girls. Curiously enough, a girl who uses magic to turn into an older self was already implemented in Magical Princess Mingi Momo in 1982, just a year before Pierrot releases its first magical girl show. An important difference is that the Pierrot magical girls are not royalty, and they don't come from another kingdom or any other fancy setting. These girls are mostly ordinary girls who just happen to suddenly gain magical powers. The appeal here is pretty simple. This girl could be you. Another part of the Pierrot formula was releasing a short manga version of the show while it aired, and most notably, picking a newcomer idol to voice their characters and sing the theme songs. Yumi Mami is known as a pioneer of the media mix marketing for this reason, as they were promoting not just this show but Takako Ora as well, who was untrained as a voice actress, but who effectively gave life to the magical idol and her songs. Magical Amy continued this with Yoko Obata, who also sings all Magical Amy songs, and Pastel Yumi with Mariko Shiga. His participation in the show helped boost her popularity, and who also sings the theme song of the Mingi Momo OVA, La Wrong in My Dream. In Persia's case, she's separately voiced by Mina Tominaga, but the theme song was a debut single for Maiko Okamoto. Most if not all of these shows were dubbed and released in some part of the world during the 80s and 90s, mostly in Europe. But for English speakers, Yumi Mami, Pastel Yumi, and the first few episodes of MA.WA.LE.MI.GI were only officially released a few years ago by the now defunct service Anime Souls. Out of all of them, Yumi Mami is the one that truly perdured, maybe because it was the original and it had something new to offer. In Pierrot's official website, Yumi Mami is said to have caused a fight upon release with an outstanding viewer rating, and the popularity still resonates today as a pop culture milestone. Meanwhile, the magical girl shows that follow are marketed as a delight for all families, or your whole family, or just lots of fun. Yumi Mami is also the only show with an official Twitter account nowadays. Last year, it had an anniversary event and a manga spin-off by Emi Mitsuki starts realization. It's also the only one out of the 4 shows that's still officially available to stream. I'm gonna go ahead and admit that I have some blind spots, because unfortunately, the other shows did not survive nearly as well as Yumi Mami did. So it's much harder to get all the details, let alone all the episodes. But there's still enough out there to get a good idea over what's the deal. So let's get into it. When it comes to the design of these girls, colors, accessories, hairstyles, all of that varies. But they all wear a very particular tutu skirt. They all have a, let's say, visual theme around an element like flowers, bubbles, eyes, the whole space. In this case, she combines the tutu skirt with a hoodie that's also a kitten compartment, which is clearly a superior design choice that got a mad genius. The combination of so much yellow with red, which are like the most attention-grabbing colors you can pick, convey this bold and colorful nature very well. Yumi Mami is very fashionable. So fashionable that she eventually breaks the one outfit per character rule, which also applies to her successors. But the original design shares Yu's colors in a more glamorous way. Yu has a compact with the colors of her hair that stores her magical wand, which later changes design. Because Yumi Mami is a singer and the show is sci-fi and, has a lot of space-related stuff. Visually, the theme around Yu's transformation are sparkles that shine like stars and a travel cloth. Funnily enough, much like space itself, her transformation can evoke the strange fear of the unknown. While Yu has a bolder color palette, Persia is the one I would consider to have the most excesses. She has longer hair, which makes its huge volume so much more noticeable. Now, big hairs were totally a thing in the 80s, but I get the feeling that Persia's is meant to evoke a specific feral, lioness kind of aesthetic. She kinda has more identities too if you count her Flintstone style as separate from her city style, which it pretty much is design-wise. She stores her magical wand in her headband, and later, she also gets a magical locket that stores a magical bracelet that finishes invoking her wand. It's a lot. Her wand also changes design, and her older self is more refined and polished looking, but in a preppy kind of way. Visually, her thing is eyes, and during her transformation, there are hearts everywhere because she collects love energy. Like her clothes and her magical self-hair, we usually think of love in shades of reds and pinks, and the place that gave her powers was completely frozen, also like her hair. With mine, things go in a different direction. I will say that with Persia, her older self is the one with a more simple design, but with Mai is the opposite. She shares Yu's colors palette, but it's toned down. Yellow is barely just an accent here, and her hair is a natural brown. She's the one with the most sporty look, and she stores her magical wand in a bracelet. Her alter ego Amy is an entertainer, so she's pretty attention-grabbing, with a feminine and glamorized version of what we consider a classical magician's attire, topped with a big-ass ribbon adorning her short hair, because it was the 80s, and the 80s loved to have golden there. An interesting detail is that Magical Amy and Kurumi Mami wear makeup, while Persia doesn't, with the difference being that the first two are stars. Visually, Mai's thing are bubbles and mirrors, likely as a reference to illusion, which can be fragile and break or burst, but Amy's bubbles don't burst. She floats on them even. And then there's Yumi, the flower-loving girl. Her design seems to want you to think that she's like a flower herself, with the shape of her clothes and the way it flies her. Even with her hair, she stores her flower wand in a flower locket, and that's it. She doesn't have a transformation, but she does have a sort of magic invoking sequence. It's important to note that, for better or worse, these shows are pretty much a product of their time. If you're into retro anime and cute 80s pop, these shows can be incredibly endearing. But there are definitely things that have not aged well, and things that are downright creepy. Why are there so many damn panty shots? And what's the need of literally any scene taking place while the girls take baths and get dressed? They get some privacy. And I don't even want to know whatever the they were thinking when they decide that using magic for fashion ending on a naked 10-year-old because she keeps forgetting her magic has a time limit will be a cool gag to do more than once. But let's focus on the general plot of the shows for a bit. Kurumi Mami, the Magical Angel, premiered in 1983. Sure, it's an idol magical girl show, but it's also a weird sci-fi adventure that has space Santa, space angels inside and outside of bubbles, the Blues Brothers. Kurumi Mami constantly faces supernatural creatures like ghosts, demons, banshees, King Godzilla, bears who come from space, an unicorn with the ability to freeze time in alternative dimensions, the fifth dimension in a doppelganger episode that involves a lot of mirrors. And that's not even half the show. It all starts with a fever dream-like adventure where this little alien called Pino Pino, that Yu tries to murder, I guess, grants her powers as thanks for saving them, and basically tells her that she can do whatever the hell she wants with it for a year. Pino Pino goes back to space and leaves two space kittens with Yu called Posi and Nega because positive and negative, get it? Yu ends up using her powers to become an idol, even though she didn't really want to be a star. She straight up pressured into it actually. But then she discovers that her childhood friend and mega crush Toshio is already a super fan. So what's a girl to do? In these shows, the parents are small business owners. This is where Yu gets the creamy part of her stage name. The transformations open a lot of possibilities, one of them being winning a crush or literally anyone who sees them, really. Kurumi Mami is very much seen as an angel. She's delicate and is always cute and fashionable. Everything she does is perfect and effortless on the first try. Although the transformations turn the girls into the ideal girl who has it all, there's still a lot of appreciation for who they are without it. After all, they only get their powers for a limited period of time. And if pressed, it's not the stardom or even the magic itself what really appeals to you, but the friends she gets to know and connect with thanks to it. There's a scene where Toshio discovers Yu.
Toshio?
The whole thing is framed as something horrifying, which highlights how intimate that secrecy, that connection between the girl, the magical self, and the fantasy it allows her to navigate is. As a consequence, Yu loses her power and stays trapped inside of the star, even if she won't be able to perform anymore. She feels lonely even when she's surrounded by clamoring fans. She has just lost a fundamental part of herself. Toshio has the chance to make any wish he wants, and the one thing he chooses is for Yu to go back to her normal self, which not only shows him prioritizing what Yu wants, but actually valuing Yu over the star he's such a big fan of. Notably, Persia, the magic fairy, also plays with the concept of staying trapped inside of the idealized self as something grim and isolated, reinforcing the message that the powers are meant to be a tool to explore themselves and not a replacement. Persia, the Magic Fairy, premiered in 1984, becoming Pierrot's second magical girl show. Persia was basically raised in the jungle with her lion friend until grandpa shows up with his grandchildren to take her to live in Japan with a couple who owns a convenience store. On the way home, her plane is intercepted by a kingdom of magical fairies, who ask for her help collecting the love energy they need to survive. To achieve this, they grant her powers for a year and warn her that if she's either discovered or fails, the twins she likes will turn into women and freeze forever? Die? I don't know. It seems like a sort of please give me what I want or your loved ones will pay situation. Remember when I say that I will describe Persia as the one with excesses? Well, like I say, there are twins here, meaning that she likes not one but two boys. She also gets 3 couples as her magical companions and a lion called Simba, who turns into a cat that kinda looks like a plushie to blend in. Persia's alter ego doesn't have a specific role like being an idol. She just transforms into anything she wants or needs at the moment, like a police officer or a firefighter or whatever. To be frank, sure, Persia is cute and entertaining, but most of its premise is definitely in the list of past aged badly. Persia, coming from an African jungle, seems to be there partly to explain why she's so athletic, which doesn't really need to be explained, period. Have you seen your show? Most importantly, it seems to be there merely to make Persia more exotic, and therefore more unique, which is not great, especially when the one black Persian it shows looks like a caricature. Threatening to turn Persia's crushes into women if she fails is also pretty questionable. You're already bringing them here and freezing their asses, so why is that even necessary? The episode, focusing on female wrestlers known as Oscar and Andre, toys with the idea of a romance between them just to end in a no homo, doesn't help either. Like, this is going out of your way to play into homophobic and transphobic panic, and in a show that centers love no less. Something I found noteworthy is an episode when Persia and a classmate playing around with the idea of fortune kiss. When Persia is little, she kisses the boy she likes on their cheeks, and they blush because the girl is cute, and when she isn't, they destroy the house trying to evade her. Anyway, it's through her older self that she has access to the fantasy of actually kissing them on their lips, leaving one to drown afterwards, probably because he already has a girlfriend, and she kisses the other in a reverse Snow White situation. By the way, this dude starts to like Persia back towards the end of the show, which might be why he gets a fairy tale treatment. So, there's that. I do have to say that Persia's opening is remarkably good at capturing that mix of dreamy, adventurous innocence and the general playfulness that surrounds the double identities in these shows. Persia was followed by Magical Emi, the Magic Star, in 1985. And look, an aspiring magician who uses her magical powers to become an actual magician. It just had to be done. Seriously, we would all have failed if we didn't have a magician magical girl. Magical Emi brings back the figure of the idol. It is Mai's idol Emily who inspires her to dream of being a successful magician, and her alter ego is named after her. Like Yumi Mami, Magical Emi is indeed a star. There's an older brother-like figure who Mai ends up liking, who she's constantly worrying over because he's a boxer. She also has a little brother that she sometimes takes along with her to adventures and makes magic for him. Actually, a good part of Mai's family is involved in the magic business, and they also appear in Emi's performances. It's notable that everything starts when Mai is helping out the magician part of the family. It's also no coincidence that Topo, the magical elf, comes out of a mirror, or that they take the body of a plushie rather than showing their true form. This is a show about illusions after all. Magical Emi brings back the idea of the transformation as a tool to explore and motivate even, rather than replace. Magical Emi is Mai's dream. She wants to be as good a magician as her idol Emily, but she wants to do it as Mai, and not as Magical Emi, no matter how long it takes her. In 1986 comes Pastel Yumi, the magic idol. Her magic is mainly drawing things into reality. Whatever she draws only exists for a short period of time, and can only be drawn once, so she has to be creative. Yumi wants to be a mangaka when she grows up, so drawing magic is perfect for her. Her parents own a flower store, so her love for flowers is well nurtured as well. On the romance side of things, like her predecessors, she likes an older boy. From what I have been able to gather, because Yumi doesn't have an older alter ego, she doesn't have a way to act on or explore those feelings. She doesn't get the romantic sunsets, she certainly doesn't get the fantasy kisses. All she can do is pine one-sidedly. As far as I know, the dude is unaware and seems to be pretty cool. He spends his time tending to flowers and saving children from moral peril.
いいかユミ、覚悟しとけよ。帰ったらただじゃ置かないからな。
ごめんなさい。よかったね、剛。あ、ありがとうよ。
While the opening centers on her one-side crush, it's interesting that the dreamy and innocently romantic atmosphere of the ending and the Valentine episode focus on Yumi and her friend and classmate Kenta, which is a far more, let's say, sensible option if you really need to have romance here. With the exception of Creamy Mami, these shows mostly leave the romance aspect as open or inconclusive. In 1988, Studio Pierrot tried its magical girl formula again with a proto-fancy Lala OVA called Harbor Light Story Fashion Lala Yori, and it's honestly a highly questionable mess. It's basically Cinderella with 80s chassiness and explosions and bikers with rich people drama, and it's not even that fun. There are good songs and sequences, but there's a lot of drama for the sake of drama, and it gets so casually dark and creepy. Like, don't get me started on this dude. And you live in a mansion. What are you doing in your daughter's bed? The best thing is definitely the opening, which is weird and extremely 80s in a very entertaining way. The fashion design part of the story was also interesting, and apparently they kinda agreed, because part of the fashion aspect will be among the very few things that will make it into the final concept for a new magical girl show 10 years later. Actually, they grabbed the name Mahou and the magical creature design and maybe some other little thing, and they threw the entire thing away. Can't say I blame them. Although I do heavily favor the opening and theme song of the original. Can you feel the urge to put on your letters and express your emotions through highly athletic dancing? You don't have to wonder how this magical girl formula will look like outside of the 80s, because Fancy Lala, the magic stage, already exists. In a way, Fancy Lala is very much the product of nostalgia for another era of magical girls. Besides recycling things from Fashion Lala, the show heavily borrows from Kumi Mami and Pastel Yumi. They even brought back Kumi Mami's character designer, Akemi Takada, for the show. Fancy Lala is an older, idealized idol like Kumi Mami, and Miho wants to be a mangaka and has the power to bring her drawings to life like Yumi. Unlike the 80s shows, the official website doesn't describe Fancy Lala as just a fun and enjoyable show. The transformation is presented as a tool for building self-confidence, and so the show is marketed as something to inspire and empower young girls who might feel awkward about their standings in the world. I'm still watching this show, but I have already noticed some interesting updates. Fancy Lala is recruited by an assertive female manager, rather than by f***ing kidnapping. It also tries to be more realistic. Like, there are talks of how paying Fancy Lala will work, which Kumi Mami never gave us a fuck about. Unfortunately for Fancy Lala, it was another era for magical girls, and there was another show shaking things up. With everyone's eyes on Cardcaptor Sakura, it's easy to imagine Fancy Lala getting buried at the time. Well, it survived a lot better than Kumi Mami's successors, and I like to think it found its audience. Regardless of where these shows choose to go specifically and how questionable or how 80s they could get, the appeal of the transformations as fantasies to explore oneself remains.
魔法の使い方一つ覚えましたね。魔法なのか。でも何に使ったらいいのかな。篠原美穂、変な妖精から魔法をもらうか。でも何に使えばいいのかな、この魔法。
It's no coincidence that they only last a year, and that they come just before the girls are about to hit puberty and experience a lot of changes. After all, their magical selves are teenage girls who are beautiful and outstanding, who don't have to face expectations or fear not fitting in, because they are ideals themselves. And they don't even have to do it full time. With a flash of light, they can go back to the comfort of childhood anytime. It's growing without actually growing up, all while living in a world of beautiful pastels and never-ending adventures.